Good to have you join me on Global News and Zuma Nigeria. The headline says Taiwan vote amidst China's influence. US and UK strike Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. NASA frees asteroid sample from stock fasteners. Israeli officials back Gaza destruction. And China's exports drop first time in 7 years. On elections in Taiwan, on Saturday, Taiwan's over 19 million eligible voters will cast their ballots for the island's next leaders and lawmakers amidst domestic economic challenges and China's continued threats against the self-ruled island. There are 3 candidates in the running for the top job. William Lai Ching-te, Taiwan's present vice president who represents the ruling Beijing Septic Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, New Taipei Mayor Hu Yo-yu of the Beijing Friendly Kuomintang KMT, and ex-Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je of the Newer Taiwan People's Party, TPP. Several in Taiwan face soaring house prices and stagnating wages, but beyond the economic issues that are vital to elections everywhere, people on the island must also contend with a more existential question that the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, wants to take control of the island by force if necessary. In the run-up to the elections, it has sent military aircraft and balloons around the island while its officials have urged voters to make the right choice. Founding editor of Taiwan Focus magazine New Bloom Brian Hoy notes that while not the only factor, the largest issue in Taiwanese presidential elections traditionally is the decision between independence and unification. Beijing claims Taiwan is part of China, but in recent years, the people of the Taiwan, numerous of whom have grown up in one of Asia's most vibrant democracies and know nothing else, have become progressively assertive about their own sense of identity. 62.8% of people identified as Taiwanese as of June 2023, while 30.5% said they were both Taiwanese and Chinese, and only 2.5% identified as Chinese, according to National Chengchi University's Election Studies Center. On Thursday, the United States and United Kingdom militaries launched strikes against numerous Houthi targets in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen, marking a significant response after the Biden administration and its allies warned that the Iran-backed militant group will bear the consequences of repeated drone and missile attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. President Joe Biden said he ordered the strikes in direct response to unprecedented Houthi attacks against international maritime vessels in the Red Sea. The president said in a statement released by the White House, "Today, at my direction, U.S. military forces, together with the United Kingdom and with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, successfully directed strikes against a number of aims in Yemen used by Houthi rebels to endanger freedom of navigation in one of the world's most vital waterways." Biden added that he will not hesitate to direct further measures to protect all people and the free flow of international commerce as necessary. According to a statement from U.S. Air Force's Central Commander, Lieutenant General Alex Grynkewich, U.S. and coalition forces executed intentional strikes on over 60 targets at 16 Iranian-backed Houthi militant locations, including command and control nodes, munitions depots, launching systems production facilities, and air defense radar systems. Over 100 precision-guided munitions of various types were used, he said. The strikes are a sign of the rising international alarm over the threat to one of the world's most critical waterways. For weeks, the U.S. had sought to avoid direct raids on Yemen because of the risk of escalation in a region already simmering with tension as the Israel-Hamas war continues, but the ongoing Houthi attacks on international shipping forced the coalition to act. Though the U.S. has carried out strikes against Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria since the outbreak of the war in Gaza, this symbols the first known hit against the Houthis in Yemen. The strikes were from fighter jets and Tomahawk missiles. More than a dozen Houthi were fired upon the missiles fired from air, surface, and sub-platforms, and were chosen for their ability to degrade the Houthis' continued attacks on vessels in the Red Sea, the U.S. officials said, according to reports. They included radar systems, drone storage and launch sites, ballistic missile storage and launch sites, and cruise missile storage and launch sites. According to a second U.S. official, on November 23rd, the USS Florida, a guided missile submarine that crossed into the Red Sea, was part of the attack on Yemen. Like the surface ships that participated in the attack, the sub-fired Tomahawk land attack missiles, the official said. I could not provide a meticulous percentage of Houthi assets that were damaged in the strikes, but that it was significant, a senior military official said according to reports on Thursday evening, adding that precision-guided munitions were used to destroy the targets and also to minimize collateral damage. Now, NASA announced on Thursday that two stubborn fasteners strapped invaluable materials sampled from an asteroid, but after a months-long process, it has finally been released. The space agency already gathered about 2.5 ounces, 70 grams of rocks and dust from OSIRIS-REx mission, which journeyed almost 4 billion miles to collect the unprecedented sample from the near-Earth asteroid called Bennu. But NASA declared in October that some material remained out of reach in a capsule hidden inside an instrument called the Touch and Go Sample Acquisition Mechanism, a robotic arm with a storage container at one end that collected the sample from Bennu. The sampler head is held closed by 35 fasteners according to NASA, but two of them proved too hard to open. Prying the mechanism loose is no simple task. The space agency must use pre-approved materials and tools around the capsule to reduce the risk of destruction or polluting the samples. Dr. Nicole Lonin, OSIRIS-REx curation lead at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, in a statement said these new tools also require to function within the tightly confined space of the glove box, restricting their height, weight, and potential arc movement. The curation team displays remarkable resilience and did incredible work to get the stubborn fasteners off the tungsten head so we can continue disassembly. To tackle the issue, NASA said two tools were established from surgical steel, the hardest metal approved for use in the pristine curation glove boxes. Before addressing the stop fasteners, a team at Johnson Space Center tested the tools in a rehearsal lab, slowly adding the torque applied to ensure the new tools could successfully remove the unyielding clamps. On Israel-Gaza conflict, the United Nations Apex Court has heard that Israel's plan to destroy Gaza comes from the highest level of state. The assertions were made at the International Court of Justice by South African lawyers as it presented its case accusing Israel of genocide. South Africa was called on the court to order Israel to conclude military actions in Gaza. On Friday, Israel, which will present its defense, has fervently rejected the accusations as baseless. The court will deliver only an opinion on the genocide allegation, although it is being closely watched. A lawyer for the High Court of South Africa, Tim Baker Ngokaitobi, told the ICJ Israel's genocidal intent was evident from the way in which the military attacks is being conducted. Adila Hassim, also representing South Africa, told the court that every day there is mounting irreparable loss of life, property, dignity, and humanity for the Palestinian people. South Africa said Israel's actions were intended to bring about the destruction of a substantial part of the Palestinian national, racial, and ethnic group in its evidence submitted before the hearing. On Friday, Israel will offer its defense, but has earlier said its actions in the Gaza Strip are justified because it is responding to Hamas's deadly attacks on 7th October. But speaking in court on Thursday, South Africa's Justice Minister, Ronald Lamola, said no attack can provide justification for or defend breaches of the Genocide Convention. Israel is a signatory to the Genocide Convention of 1948, which defines genocide and commits states to stop it. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday said the hypocrisy of South Africa screams to the heavens, criticizing the country for the failing to respond to atrocities in Syria and Yemen committed by partners of Hamas. Meanwhile, the United States said that it saw no justification for South Africa's allegation that Israel has committed genocide. White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said they are defending themselves against a still viable threat. The ICJ is the United Nations highest court, based in The Hague in the Netherlands. Its rulings are theoretically legally binding on parties to the ICJ, which include Israel and South Africa, but are not enforceable. In 2022, the court ordered Russia to immediately suspend military operations in Ukraine, an order that was ignored. On economy, for the first time since 2016, China's full-year exports fell as international demand slowed. In 2023, exports measured in US dollar terms stood at 3.38 trillion US dollars, down by 4.6% rather compared to the year before, according to Chinese custom figures released on Friday. In 2022, Chinese exports improved by 7% from the previous year. The last time China registered a fall in overseas shipments was in 2016, when exports declined to 7.7% in the face of weak demand. Imports fell 5.5% to 2.56 trillion naira last year. That left the world's second largest economy with a trade surplus of 823 billion US dollars. Liu Daliang, a spokesperson for the General Administration of Customs, said on Friday in Beijing that the global economic recovery has been weak. In the past year, sluggish external demand has hit China's exports. He believes 2024's exports to continue facing difficulties as global demand is likely to remain weak and protectionism and unilateralism will hinder the sector's growth, he added. On weather and climate, Arctic blast, US faces brutal cold, temperatures plunge to minus 30s. A vicious blast of Arctic air will spread through the central US on the heels of a great storm, ultimately bringing the coldest air of the season as far south as Texas. Iowans headed to the first presidential primary for the 2024 election on Monday will have to brave what looks possibly to be the coldest caucus in state history. And the cold is anticipated to test Texas's notoriously vulnerable to extreme temperatures power grid for the first time this winter. Both Friday and Saturday nights, temperatures could drop as low as 20 to 30 degrees below zero in the northern plains and combine with gusty winds to make for frigid wind chills as low as 50 degrees below zero. Over 15 million people in the central US are under wind chill alerts where frostbite could happen in as little as 10 minutes on exposed skin. The cold will spread south and east across the country and eventually cover Texas and other parts of South by the weekend, lasting into the middle of next week. On Friday afternoon, high temperatures will possibly fail to reach 0 degrees across much of Montana and North Dakota. High temperatures in the single digits of tens will then spread east into parts of the Central Plains and Mid-East. By the weekend, the coldest air will stretch from Denver to Indianapolis, with temperatures at least 30 degrees below normal. Denver's high temperature is forecast to drop from 33 degrees on Friday to 10 degrees on Saturday, deep into 7 degrees on Sunday. The wind chill Sunday morning in Denver is expected to be as low as minus 20 degrees. The plummeting temperatures will increase power demand on Texas's power grid, enough that the state's independent grid operator, ERCOT, issued a weather watch for Monday, cautioning of the looming rise in demand and potential dip in reserves. ERCOT on Thursday said there was expected to be enough power to avoid outages. Over 200 people died, most of them from hypothermia, during a historic bout of cold and an ice storm in February 2021, during which ERCOT implemented rolling power outages to prevent the power grid's collapse. While it will be cold in Texas, it's not expected to be as severe, widespread, or prolonged as in 2021. This cold air is not likely to threaten any substantial records, but will come as quite a shock after a warm begin to winter. Chicago hasn't had a high temperature below freezing since November 28th. Brett Batcher, meteorologist for the National Weather Service office in Chicago, said according to reports. Wind chills on Monday in Chicago will be near or below minus 30 degrees, Batcher said, comparable to the 2017 and 2018 cold snap. Now, Trump blends legal battles into campaign drama. On Thursday, Donald Trump insisted on having his say appearing in court in New York at the end of the civil fraud case against the Trump Organization. The judge had earlier said the ex-president will not be able to speak in the courtroom, but eventually relented and gave him a few minutes. He used that platform to accuse the city's attorney general of hating him before striding out of the courtroom and declaring the case a sham to waiting reporters. But that wasn't enough. A full news conference followed at a building he owns and is accused of fraudulently valuing a 40 Wall Street down the road. Trump is treating his court appearances as though they are campaign events, blending his legal defense with his re-election bid as a U.S. presidential race like no other kicks into higher gear. His legal pains across the country are, in his telling, all part of a plan by Joe Biden, the Democrats, and the White House to stop him winning the 2024 election. Thursday's appearance in New York followed hot on the heels of another in Washington earlier in the week. The former president made a personal appearance at a federal appeals court where his lawyers argued that he could not be tried for conspiring to overturn the 2020 election. As his rivals for the Republican presidential nomination have been crisscrossing Iowa ahead of the first voting contest on Monday, Trump has been claiming that he is being dragged off the campaign trail by the judiciary. Still on the news, Ecuador recovering from gang horror. Slowly and with anxiety, life in Guayaquil is beginning to return. Few residents have fully recovered from the shock from the outright chaos and bloodshed of this week, a moment which will live long in the city's collective memory. The government insists that the country is now engaged in a war with the gangs and cannot back down in the face of intimidation from either inside or outside the prisons. Hostage taking is the ugly part of war, President Daniel Noboa said this week. That is of little comfort to many, though they accuse the government of negligence and of forgetting about the victims. Amidst the chaos, the most brazen act of gang violence was in the TC television studio in Guayaquil when armed men took staff hostage, brandishing weapons at the journalists live on air. We'll take a quick short break, and when we come back, I'll bring you more stories. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Now on judicial matters in Nigeria, 7 states on edge as Supreme Court delivers judgment. There is amplified security amid anxiety in some of the states where the Supreme Court judgment is anticipated today in the dispute over the March 18, 2023 governorship elections. Yesterday, the court announced that the appeals of Plateau, Kano, Zamfara, Lagos, Cross Rivers, Bauchi, and Ebonyi will be decided today. The situation is tense, especially in Plateau, Kano, and Zamfara states. Supporters of the All Progressives Congress (APC), People's Democratic Party (PDP), and New Nigeria People's Party (NNPP) are taking different actions in preparation for the D-Day. The police are also on high alert in these states. Governors in the eye of the storm are Caleb Mutfwang of Plateau, Abba Yusuf of Kano, Dauda Lawal of Zamfara, Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos, Francis Ngui Furu, Ebonyi State, and Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State. They will either retain their seats today or be booted out. And finally on the news, Central Bank of Nigeria prepares summit, crafts directors list for union and others. Signs have appeared that this week or early next week, the Central Bank of Nigeria leadership will hold meetings with the shareholders of Union Bank of Nigeria, Polaris Bank, and Keystone Bank as a follow-up to the dismissal of the boards of directors of the 3 banks. On Wednesday, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, had fired the boards of the banks, citing corporate governance failure and non-compliance with regulatory requirements, among others, as reasons. The step marks a major milestone in implementation of the reports of the Special Investigator on the CBN and connected entities, Jim Obazi. The report was submitted to President Bola Tinubu on December 20th, 2023. barely 24 hours after the CBN sacked the boards of Union, Polaris, and Keystone banks. However, findings have shown that the leadership of the Apex Bank will meet shareholders of the affected lenders. Sidi Hakama, the acting CBN Director, Corporate Communications, had on Wednesday in a statement alleged that Union Bank, Polaris Bank, and Keystone Bank were guilty of issues it said posed a threat to the financial stability of the banking sector. The Central Bank of Nigeria in the early hours of Thursday announced some members of the interim management of for the three banks following the development. For Union Bank, Yetunde Oni was named the managing director while Manir Bali Ringim emerged an executive director. For the interim management team of Keystone, Hassan Imam was named the managing director while Choma Mang was appointed an executive director. For Polaris Bank, Lawal Mudathir Omakayode Akintola was named the managing director while Chris Onyeka Yufikulu is an executive director. According to the CBN, the appointment takes immediate effect and they are to oversee the affairs of the three banks whose boards and management were dissolved on Wednesday after a meeting involving the CBN Special Investigator Obazi and the CBN Governor Olayemi Cardoso. A recap of major stories says Taiwan votes amidst China's influence. US and UK strike Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. NASA frees asteroid sample from stock fasteners. Israeli officials back Gaza destruction and China's exports drop. First time in 7 years. That's all on the news. I am Lois Dureki. Have a great weekend ahead.